So there was this moment when you said to me, Jim, that we are not transitioning, we have transitioned. And that moment of clarity was really powerful to receive that early on in this partnership. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Next Sunday podcast. This is an important part 2.
Whoa.
I believe this is the first time ever. There's been a part 1 and a part 2. So if you haven't heard the last episode, you should go back, rewind, go back and check out that podcast episode first, where we talked about passing the baton and what it looks like.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
There is a baton?
There's a baton. It's a very real thing.
Did we pass?
Yeah.
Like
I think we did it.
We should have bought one.
Yeah.
We should have really gotten one.
Yeah. That's
engraved.
An epic fail. Where's the prop?
How did we miss that?
That's it.
So if you're doing Succession, make sure you do actually get a baton. That would be our advice.
That's it.
That's our fail. That's our fail.
That real serious moment. Unlike this podcast start, which is not so serious after all, but totally fine. Hey, so really go back and listen to that first one where we told the story of how this succession has kind of come to be at Generis. We think it could be helpful for you, but Jim has moved into the role of chairman from being CEO for a very long time inside the organization. And here I am as the new guy that's just stepped in on that role. So we told the story on the first one, but this one, we're going to get a little more practical and tactical, Jim, to talk about some of the things we've done and how we've approached doing this handoff. And so part of that was we had some different people groups to communicate along the way. So there was some kind of, as we mentioned on the last one, there's a few people we need to kind of take the temperature of, kind of figure out how they felt about this and realize that, there's some good feedback coming and felt good about that. Then we had to build kind of a communication plan of who we're going to tell when, who's going to say what, when's it going to go on social media, kind of practically that. How did you wrestle with figuring out that timing and what that could look like? Because it ultimately ended up being faster than what we had originally kicked around on how we're going to do this.
Are you saying that I told you that we were not transitioning? We had already transitioned?
That's exactly
Is that was
right.
it?
That's
and here's your new business cards, by the way.
By the way.
Like when we ordered your new business cards, was that a clue? Wait, I think this has already happened.
Yeah. Oh, okay, here we are.
I'm out of here, bro. I'm done. I mean, again, Frank, I think you have to feel your own rhythm.
Yep.
This was the right rhythm for us. I'm not going to say it would be the right rhythm for everyone because, I think we did probably, hit the gas pedal and move a little quicker.
Yeah.
But it was because of what we talked about in episode 1 that let us do that. Just watching you move from the person sitting at the table, advising us, to the person who loved being at the table and actually leading us and developing the respect of the team and, importantly, developing respect from me.
Jim, I need to interrupt you real quick. That was very important, gaining that respect from you and the team. You just said something that's extremely significant.
Okay.
You don't even know it.
That happens with me sometimes.
Significant.
So we're going to back up and talk about that.
I want to make sure we don't miss it because we're early in on this.
Yes, we are.
We're still very early.
We're still figuring some of it out.
You started just now what you were just saying by saying, Frank, you started leading us. You did not say the team. Mm-hmm. There was a posture shift there. Mm-hmm. Like you're literally saying, I'm leading you. You've been leading this organization forever, but you just said you're leading us. You learned that and gained some really good insight from your church on how to have that posture. Whatever you're comfortable sharing, I think it could be helpful for you to hear maybe that groundwork that was started in Succession at your own church a few years ago.
Yeah.
And how that shaped your language. Because the fact that you just said to everybody, you're leading us, and how you were leading us and you're putting yourself in that category is significant.
So my church transitioned in October of 2019. Not a great time for a new pastor to step in, but he did it magnificently. Our founding pastor passed the baton. And so some friends of mine and people out in church space that know about my church and know how well our transition has gone have said to me, hey, so tell me why, how's it gone? I was like, as well as you think it has. It's amazing. Why do you think that is? And I said, I think there's a lot of reasons, but I'm going to give you what I think is the main reason. Our founding pastor when he describes his successor, has never used the words my boss, my successor, anything other than my pastor.
Yeah.
That's the words he uses, my pastor. And so what that means is that he now leads the whole organization.
Yeah.
Our founding pastor is still on staff. He's a teaching pastor with us and heads up our one of our key ministry areas. But he always uses that language, and that's the transition that you stepped into. You actually started putting together. We do our 3 times a year off-site retreats. You put together the agenda for the 2023 November retreat. Mm-hmm. So that was when you were starting to step forward and kind of show that. And I was like, well, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And it went great.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I've watched you. You've been stepping in and kind of leading us in the home office, leading our home office team, kind of for a while. You've been stepping into that posture. And so, that's I'm taking my lead from you. I've told you that behind the scenes. Yep. That first of all, that if there is ever something that you and I have a different point of view on, there's only 2 people that'll know about that. 4 if you include our spouses.
Yeah.
But I'm not planning to tell Nancy. So you can decide whether to tell Jess. It'll only be you and me because it'll happen behind closed doors. Yeah. And when we walk out, there'll only be one point of view.
Yeah.
There'll only be one. And it's most likely going to be yours.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's that. And that's a part of making transition work is you're releasing control. You're trusting and respect. Those are 2 big words. To trust, I trust and respect you to do the right thing. Because I've watched you and your track record is good. And a big part of this, you've heard me say this over and over again, especially to outside parties, is, why Frank? Well, there's a number of reasons, and I can list them. And I said, but here's the one that if this wasn't true, it would be a deal killer. I think Frank has a really good idea of what I would do if I had another 20-year run with this organization. I think he's really clear about that. And that means a lot to me because I'm not looking, I think what we've built to this point is built to go in that direction, not some other direction over here or there. And he understands what that is, and he's committed to that, as are the rest of the people on our executive team.
Right.
And so what that does is it enhances our rapport that we might have some smaller directional things along the way, but we all know what direction we're trying to go. And I trust and respect you to do that. Well, that releases me because now I don't have to, trust and respect are my love language, but it would be a part of any transition. And I see it when, senior pastors turn over to the next guy, especially a founding pastor or a founding person in a nonprofit or something. It's just like the trust and respect is not there. And that's why a lot of why the transition doesn't go well.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, bro, so I don't have to work. Bro, I may be in the back seat, but I'm in the back seat taking a nap. I'm not in the back seat looking over your shoulder, okay? Let's just make sure we're clear about it. You know that, right? Yeah. And anything that you and I have to cover that would ever fall in the ground of, hey, I don't think that was the right call. Nobody's ever going to know that but me and you.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do it in the posture of second guessing and telling you were wrong. You know my favorite language. How can we autopsy this situation? Right. And learn from it, glean from it the things that we can learn and be better the next time something like this comes up. That's all it's ever going to be about.
That's so good.
Right.
And one thing that makes it really helpful as we navigate this transition and hopefully do it well is you are easy to respect and trust and celebrate what's been built. And so I got in front, it was unscripted, but the last time we had everybody together, so on the Wednesday that you made the announcement to all the consultants, you and Nancy got up there and you made the announcement, and then we had other stuff to get to, so we just went right back to work, right? Well, the next day I was handling some transition in between sessions and just felt prompted to address the group. It wasn't part of the script, but just to say, hey, just so we're on the same page, if you feel whiplash in this, if things feel suddenly like, where are we going? What is going on? Something hasn't been communicated right, and we're not on the same page because Jim and I are on the same page, and I'm just excited about building on what's already been built and continue to grow and just steward well what's been entrusted to our care. Yeah. And so I wanted to send that message. I think I would give a word of caution. So maybe this isn't always at the senior leadership level. So I'll use a youth ministry example of succession, okay, in the minor, and you can figure out how it plays in the majors, okay? And that's it. Almost every time, when you get a new youth pastor, two things happen in your ministry. You get a rebrand and you get new curriculum. The reality is neither of those two things have anything to do with relationship and people, with the kids, the volunteers, and the congregation. It's a false sense of progress, and it's a statement of change. And I think it's, in most cases, ridiculous and unnecessary and a distraction. And it's a false sense of progress. And so I actually got up as part of that and said, by the way, I'm not changing our logo. I like the color green. Like, it works. It's fine. Like, we don't need to go changing all that stuff. That is superficial. At the end of the day, we're building on something. Do we align on that vision? But you make it easy. And I would say that some people, when they're in transition, they get under and they find out some things that they didn't know. Now that they're in the seat. That has not been my experience. So I'm thankful to you that you've been very transparent with me all along the way of, hey, we're great at this. We're not so great at this. This is something we've got to manage, and we're still trying to figure it out. And this isn't perfectly clear, but we've landed here for a reason. There's been a lot of transparency of why we are where we are and why, there's a reason we haven't drawn hard lines on the way this works, because you've given me that context. And so you've operated with integrity and character, which made it easy to respect and trust you. And there's not been any surprises, not a single one yet. And so I'm waiting on what's about to happen. But so far, there wasn't anything that you didn't give me a heads up on, whether it be relational dynamics or partner organizations we work with, or how we operate, or where it gets a little icky sometimes or complicated. You just shared all that with me over the last few months and year.
Yeah.
So that's been super helpful.
Well, and you've been in the room and you've had a front row seat to observe some of this. And, it's not that hard to figure out when you sit in the room. If you hadn't been sitting in the room, then I might have had to translate a lot more of it for you. But you've sat in the room and you understand. We love our team. We've got an amazing group of people. But it's a lot of different personalities in that room.
That's right.
And you've got to kind of know who's where and how it all lands and how they react and how they say, so that you can understand what's going on and really, kind of embrace the culture and kind of make it better where it needs to be, and just understand it where it's in the places where it's like, okay, that's the way it is, and it's probably not going to change that.
Yeah.
We don't have that much of that, because I mean, in our room right now, it's as good as it's ever been.
Yeah, it's so
and we've had it really good sometimes over the years, but our consulting team is so good, so on the same page, and so locked in, both on the advancement side and on the church side. But being in the room has helped you to get a sense of the personalities and the flow and kind of how things take place in Generis.
That's been really, really helpful. I will say this, Jim. You also gave, once we decided that we were going to move forward this way, you gave me a maximum timeline of transition. We're going to do it by this time. It might be sooner. Let's get under the hood and kind of figure this out. But it's not going to be longer than this, because that would be unwise for us to leave this kind of weird middle ground. You were very aware. You just kind of came in with that and said, hey, it's not going to be longer than this. It may be shorter. And then it was a lot shorter. And we just kind of jumped in. It was obvious. Nope, no reason to apologize. It ended up working out.
We got in the HOV lane and went a little faster, which is, if anybody's ever ridden with me, that's a pattern.
That's it. That's it. You're like, just push the gas a little harder.
Maybe.
What are some of the, like, practically, what are the things that you had to wrestle with and or think through in the way that we've communicated it? Like, we wrestled with, do we do some like big press release, or do we just kind of rock and roll and just do a little post and just kind of move on? Like, we got in kind of the weeds of some of that to wrestle with it, to go, what do our people need? What do the clients need to hear?
Yeah.
How did you go about kind of wrestling with how to figure out those practical things? Because there's multiple ways we could have done that.
There is. Mm-hmm.
So less about the tactical, but how did you come to the conclusion?
Well, I think it fits a pattern that we use in helping churches communicate big initiatives, and that is the idea of concentric circles. There's a smaller circle and a bigger circle and a bigger circle and who are those circles, right? And so there were a couple of people on the team, who were a part of it. I mean, this wouldn't be a secret to anybody. I don't know that I've said this outwardly, but this wouldn't be a secret to anyone. Don Martin, our 10-year, very, very influential, very catalytic chief operating officer, and everybody on our team respects him. Before anybody other than Nancy knew, I went to him with the idea. And I said, I think I see a picture developing. What do you think? And he said, I can see that. I can absolutely see that. Mm-hmm. So that was helpful to me to just kind of get that. I wanted to be very careful about who I said anything to this about. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And there is a point in time where I could have said, oh, no, we're just not going to do this, or slow the timeline down. Right. But I was locked into, hey, I think I can make this happen. And I was looking on this timeline, and I was looking for that. Then I went to a couple of key people inside the team and got good reads from them. Then, we have our advisory council. We have a group of 5 people internally that get a little bit closer look behind the curtain. Actually, a lot closer look behind the curtain of what's going on. Yeah. They do advise us on things. And so we brought them into the circle. And we're getting like 99% validation every point along the way from people who are deeply into the culture and kind of the ethos of our organization. So those were kind of, you can see the circles that are building there. And then after the advisory council, it was like, okay, there's maybe 2 or 3 people on our team. Think of people in your congregation that don't need to hear it in a worship service on Sunday. We need to just give them a heads up. Yep. And then there was everybody else on that Wednesday of our February get-together. Yeah. Then after that, we had kind of a short list of friends in the quote unquote in church world, and we just communicated that privately. We had considered a major press release, but that's just not us. We've never done that on anything else, and for us to do that would have probably raised more questions. There are always going to be questions about transition of like, hey, what's the story behind the story? Well, this one actually has the added advantage of being true. Yeah. There is no story behind the story. So keep scratching and probing, but there's not another one. You're kind of hearing the full version here. Right. And then after we'd done that, there were some clients of mine that I needed to notify, because this doesn't affect my client work. Mm-hmm. It does affect my leadership of the organization. Yeah. And I don't want any of them to be rattled to like, hey, wait, I just signed on with Jim. What's he doing here? No, not to worry. And then we just let the rest of it kind of leak out. Right. It's interesting. Here's one of the things that was interesting. I think I told you this, and I think I actually told you who this is. A person outside the organization who's a friend of mine saw the first episode of Next Sunday and said to another friend of mine, like, that's the next CEO of Generis right there. Wow. And I said to him point blank, I said, well, it's interesting because when we recorded that, Frank and I had not even had one conversation about this. Not one. Not one. So good on you. He said, well, I was just kind of predicting. I was like, well, good on you, because that's not why he's is the co-host of Next Sunday. It was because of this rapport we developed sitting in my office.
That's right.
It was a very natural thing for us to do, right?
That's so good. What I want to push in on is the concentric circles. That's a logical, simple way to do that. We were really blessed that everybody honored the request to keep it to themselves. Yeah. Like, it didn't sprawl out. And that was wise choices by you of who you chose to talk to. But I think that really mattered. And so that was really wise. So I affirm that. The other thing is, when you made the comment of like, well, we didn't do some big press release because that's not who we are. That's not what we do. And sometimes it feels like in transition, because transitions don't happen often, hopefully, in an organization.
That's the plan here, if I hadn't mentioned that to you.
Yeah, that's it. So the more you can make it feel like we're celebrating this, but we're also in stride, and God's already given us our clear vision, and we're just kind of moving forward. And so the more our communications and our efforts can align with who we are as an organization, to suddenly get off kilter or do something else, it would be right out the gate going, that's kind of weird that we chose to do. We've never done that before. Yeah. Instead of it being like, oh, this is exactly how we would do it. Mm-hmm. How would we do it? We're extremely relational. We're going to text. We're going to call people. We're going to, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. That's way more relational and way more the way we're wired as an organization and as people. So I think that helps. Yeah.
So we just pushed it out on social media. We pushed it out on LinkedIn. We pushed it out on Instagram, and and then text messages before we actually did some of that. Yeah. Right. And I think the idea, Frank, is may not be the exact way you do it in terms of your rhythm. Our circumstances allowed us to go faster than maybe some would even advise.
Sure.
Right? But it was the right posture for us. And knowing, and so we haven't talked about this, the contrast between the internal reaction and the external reaction, because there were a lot of people externally like, whoa, wait a second, I didn't see that coming. But internally, everybody said, oh, I saw that coming.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, thanks, Jim, for letting us know. We knew he was the next guy, but I appreciate you actually letting us know. Right? That was kind of the reaction in the room, which is that the definition of a great transition internally? Sure. Of course it is. Of course it is. Right? But externally, we had some other, and we just thought if we put out a big PR announcement, that's just going to raise more questions than would be asked anyway. Yeah. And we'll just let our team answer the question. Gosh, that might have been a surprise to you, but it wasn't a surprise to us. This has been in the works for a while.
Yeah, that's so good.
Right.
What?
So I feel like our circumstances gave us permission to move at a faster pace.
Which
that makes sense?
Which is great. Here's I would emphasize. We are so blessed that this has gone so well. I'm so thankful. I mean, it's an answer to daily prayers. Yeah. It truly is. While our circumstances were unique, there was a lot of thought and process that went into how every single thing would be handled along the way. And, we have somebody on our team who helps with succession in Dave Travis, who has helped many of the churches across America have transitions that people are like, wow, how did they find that guy? What happened there? How did this go so well? This is such a natural fit. That pastor's still worshiping under that other pastor and like leading now. And how is this all working so well? So many stories. I would say there's a level of intentionality and a level of focus that's necessary, especially in church dynamics, which will be different than the dynamics we had to navigate. And so leaning in on Dave, we even got his book out and flip through along the way to go, is there any steps that we skipped? Do we need to call Dave on anything? Like we literally did that, right? We did. Highlighted, and there was a couple things where like, hey, I need to add some clarity here, or what would this look like? And so doing that and being intentional about it, we don't want to get this wrong, right? So you don't want to get this wrong. So having that support system could be really critical. So I just want to let everybody know that Dave is there, ready and available to help, especially churches. He helps some great MPOs, but man, his gifting to help with this process and some of the extra layers of complexity is really important. So I just want to make sure we have the privilege to be up close and personal to that and hear all the stories and kind of pull all that together. But that could be a really good tool for you.
33 statements on succession, which actually I learned now it's 40. He has 7 more that he's come up with. Probably they have names on them because you have an original idea and then you have names on the other ones. That's down another road. We won't do an episode on that today. But here's the thing, Frank. I would say to anybody in succession, there's a lot of things. For the person who is letting go, you're going to have to deal with control and identity and any other insecurities that you have, right? So if it bothers you to have people who are more talented than you in the room, that's going to be a problem for you. It's going to get in the way at some point in succession. That doesn't bother me. I like to be, I've got a fair amount of ego. I like to think it's healthy ego. I want to be the best. I want to be the best in the room, but I recognize I'm not always the best in the room. And I value and respect when somebody is better than me in general or on any topic. And I was like, hey, let's get him up there. He's forgotten more about this topic than I know, so let's get him up there, or her, or whoever that is. But for a lot of leaders, man, that gets in their way. Yeah. That gets in their way, is that I can't do it. So, but control and identity. Am I willing to let go of the control of this? And how much of my identity is caught up in my role as the CEO of Generis? How much of my identity? And you can only resolve that in your quiet time with God and looking in the mirror at yourself. And if you have a therapist, then you probably might need to deal with it there. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
But I've just always had the benefit of having a few friends and a godly wife who can help me process that stuff. And I had to answer that because, man, I'm telling you, I've been the CEO of Generis for a minute now, 28 plus years. Yeah. And it's like, is that your identity? I've stared at, I haven't told you this. I stared at that business card, Frank, with my name and title on it I don't know how many times, and said, is that an issue for me?
Yeah.
Because if it is, then I'm going to have to stop this and slow it down until I can resolve this. I'm not going to complicate it for anybody who comes after me, and especially not for you, right? And I've resolved it. It's not that won't jump up every now and then in my background. It might. But, you know, I'm proud to have a team that I can hand this off to that can take this 20 years down the road. I might still be around, you know, hopefully clothed and in my right mind, you know, and speaking clearly. That's right. But I know that the future of Generis, and by the way, you know the other thing too, Frank?
What's that?
And I know this was happening, not in an unhealthy way, because there is kind of this thing with some of the key people, and some of them said it to my face. We love having you around, but who's next?
Yeah.
We love having you around. We just celebrated your 70th birthday last June. Mm-hmm. Who's next?
Yeah.
And so they're carrying both of these. Mm-hmm. And so what one of them said is, I love the way this is playing out because we still get you and we get our leader for the future, right? Because what I said in the team was, you know, and by the way, this wouldn't be the way for everybody because not everybody can have it where the one person, the near founder stays and the other person comes in. Sometimes that's just not the best way to do it, right? Personalities and whatnot. But this doesn't allow me to leave sooner. I get to stay longer because now I've got a role that is not nearly as weighty on me. I mean, you're kind to say, you know, my pace and all the other stuff that I do. Yeah, but that's not sustainable, Frank. I mean, I'm happy to do it. I love doing it. I get energized. You know, I work hard, play hard. You know that. I take plenty of time off during the year. But when I'm working hard. But that's not a sustainable pace for me. And it's not fair to Generis for me not to address that, right? So that's a big part of succession, but it's that letting go of control and making sure your identity doesn't get in the way. And here's the other part. To the person that is taking it over, to the extent that you don't like, trust, and respect that person, it's going to get in the way. Wow. And I just threw in because trust and respect were already there. Yeah. But you got to like them, you got to trust them, and you got to respect them. I'm not saying it doesn't mean it won't work. Yeah. I'm just telling you it's a headwind that gets in the way. Because for you and me, I've dealt with identity and control, and I like, trust, and respect you. I love trust and respect you, actually, which makes all of this just work so much easier for us. And so for the people who have questioned you, because the question you hear, especially from people who are used to church success, what's Jim going to do? Oh, he's still around. And they look at you like, whoa. Uh-oh. That's That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
How's that working?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's going great. I love having you around. And one of the things that's fun about this is, hey, there's going to be some wonky steps along the way. So like one of our team members going ahead and ordering business cards, and Jim walking in one day before the announcement even occurred with his new business card sitting on his desk. It's like, your title's changed. We hadn't even made the announcement yet. It was already like wow. We didn't wait long on that one. And then we're relaying out the office right now. And I forward over the new plans for the office. And somehow they had accidentally deleted where Jim's new office is going to be and replaced it with common workspace area. And so I didn't even look at it. And so Jim can either laugh about that or be like, what the heck is going on? And he goes, hey, should I take this as a hint? Like, did something happen here? And it was just it was one of those things where it could have been, if you weren't in a great headspace, it could have been something that was really unnerving or off-putting, and instead you're like, this is funny. You're like, what's going on here?
Hey, I get the hint. I get the hint, y'all.
I thought you were going to keep me around, and now my office is gone.
I know. Chairman actually means I get a chair. That's what it means. I get a chair in a working space.
Yeah, no closing door or any of that
stuff.
No,
none of that.
So,
none of that.
But I say that to say all of them were small. But there's been these little things of like, oh, that could have been better timed, or that could have been done a little differently.
But they're tests for us to see if there's insecurities or sensitivities that are sitting out there that we haven't dealt with yet. And there may come one.
That's right.
But at this point, they haven't. I mean, I did tell some of the people at Exponential, and they was like, hey, how's Frank working out? I said, new CEO. I said, he's the single meanest boss I've ever worked for. I said, he's got I walk in like 10 minutes late. He's got this. He's checking my vacation schedule. I think I'm on a sales quota. I just don't know what it is. I think probably thinks I'm a slacker or something.
Oh,
and of course, they all laugh.
Yeah,
they're all laughing.
Well, it was fun. Even you made the announcement on a Wednesday. And we all have lanyards, so everybody gets to know each other and has names. And the next day you walk in and you had taken a Sharpie and wrote former CEO at the top of it. And I just thought that was like a wonderful posture and a message to the team of like, hey, there's lots to figure out. This is super complicated, but we can have fun with this and like, let's lean in and let's go with this well.
But here's the thing, Frank. Here's another thing. We haven't talked about this. Here's how the teams embrace it, just naturally. I did not say in the announcement, nor did you, nobody said this, matters formerly addressed to me should now be addressed to Frank. Nobody said that, yep. But that's what's happened.
You're right. Immediately, that's what happened.
People are coming to you on things that they would have asked me, and I couldn't be more happy. I see some of them copy me, which is fine, and I'm just like, hey, let's just see what Frank. If you need me, I'm there to give you advice. Hey, here's how I'm thinking about handling it, because it's not that you don't know. It's just most of the time when you come to me, you're checking to see is there history here that I'm not aware of. That's kind of your number one thing. Yep. Is there any history here? No, that's good. Just make the call.
Yeah, that's right.
But I love the way the team just naturally gravitated to you and your new role. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really good. Hey, listen, guys, we know this is complicated, and we have walked alongside of many pastors and church leaders that this has not gone well, that they've had a super tough transition, and it's hard. We've prayed for you. Jim and I have had, even recently, some conversations just our heart hurting for some churches that have just had a hard time in transition.
Oh, the one you told me the other day? Oh, yeah. Oh, that was gut-wrenching. Gut-wrenching. Gut-wrenching.
So you want what's best for the church. And so we understand that it's complicated. We're just trying to raise that, hopefully a little bit of hope and encouragement that it can go really well, and give you some insights and wisdom along the way of just some things that maybe played out really well. If you were to take one thing away from these 2 episodes, if I could just be honest with you, it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with Jim choosing to do the hard work of working on himself to get ready for this transition, to where we can have those playful moments and we can have those honest conversations, and he can sit in a meeting like he did yesterday with our executive team and see me starting to get a little fired up about something, and instead of chiming in with a ton of wisdom and insight, just sit back, hold back, go ahead. Like, let me process. He could have easily chimed in at any moment and gave insight, wisdom, and kind of done a trump card. And I would have deferred to him. But he just let the moment breathe. And that's come from not just being self-aware in that moment, but the hard work he's done on the front end and just recognizing that. So I don't think that you can strategize your way out of this without that part being true. I don't care how good the systems are. If there's not that leader that's wanting to stick around and kind of do that handoff the right way, it can't be done unless that leader's willing to do the hard work personally.
Yeah, and that hard work has really been the work that God has done in me. And you and I both know, we were there at the conference. You know exactly the moment I'm talking about, in November of 2023, when I had an aha, and God just called me to a new level of relationship with him starting in 2024. Yeah. And you know that journey. We may talk about that on some other episode, but that is a part of that, because that is where God started working on my heart. That's and so just good. Kind of just taking me to a whole new level there. So I'm just thankful. I'm just grateful. Yeah. And just glad that we get a chance to talk about a great story. I know it won't be everybody's story, but like you said, hopefully it'll be some encouragement that it can go well. We're not succession experts, so we're just talking to you about what it looks like at ground level.
That's right.
And maybe this will be helpful for somebody in their situation that God could use that. So,
Jim, another great conversation. Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in to the Next Sunday podcast. Transitions don't end a story.
They begin a new chapter.
And we believe what's ahead is even greater than what's behind.